guarantees the mortgage so the bank doesn't have to worry about the money if the project defaults. So mortgage insurance is actually a fantastically lucrative business for the federal government, for Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, because in Canada, unlike the United States, our mortgage markets are relatively stable. So what it basically means is money in the bank. And how much money in the bank does it mean? Well, this year, Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation is generating a profit. That is to say, by the time you take all of their spending, including all their affordable housing spending, and then you add in all of the money they're making from selling mortgage insurance, this year's profit is around $1 billion. $1 billion this year, the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. And I'm sure all of you are saying, like me, well, that's great, because now they've got $1 billion, and all that money they're taking out of affordable housing they can put back in. But in fact, when you're a commercial operation like CMHC, that $1 billion goes back to the federal government so they can buy more fighter jets or build more prisons or have Tony Clement give more money to people in his riding or whatever else it is they do, but it sure as heck isn't going into housing. So we've got a big problem facing us, which is that, first of all, federal government is continuing very rapidly with the withdrawal of housing, and secondly, it's actually making money out of housing-related activities, but it's not reinvesting them back into housing. And I want to say to you that as bad as all this is, the year 2014 is a year that all of us should be getting a little bit panicked about. And why 2014? Well, 2014, which just a few years from now, 2014 is the year that all of the remaining very small federal housing and homelessness programs are all due to expire. So the National Homelessness Program, the one that Laura mentioned, is the program that, among other things, pays for the ID work that Street Health does, the great ID work, and it pays for a lot of great programs and services across the country. That's expiring in 2014. Federal Affordable Housing Initiative, what's left of it after they've cut so much out of it already, will be gone by 2014. The National Federal Housing Repair Program for low-income housing, gone by 2014. So by 2014, we're going to lose all of that funding. It's all going to expire. We're also, that's the year that the Canada Health transfers come up for renegotiation. It's the year the Canada Social transfers come up for renegotiation. So it's a big year for those of us that care about people in this country, because we stand to lose what little we have now and be in an even worse situation. So I want to encourage you all to begin to mobilize around these issues, that we do have to be very clear in saying, as Tom said so clearly, that when the feds do what they do way off in Ottawa, it has a huge impact on what happens on the streets of this city. So final thing I just want to say to you, because I'm not sure exactly, I'm just kind of riffing here and I don't know how much time I have. I want to say that there's a couple of things that we can actually say to the federal government that it can do that the current government is kind of anxious not to spend money, but there are ways they can spend money without really spending money, which sounds a little bit magical, but it's true. And one of the ways they can do it, and it's something that the Ontario government did a couple of years ago, and we think it's something the feds can do, and that is that although we're in the midst of a global recession, and which, despite the news you heard that the recession's over, it isn't actually over. It's just as bad as always, and income inequality and other issues continue to get worse. But despite the fact that we're in the midst of terrible economic times, and it's pretty hard for you, me, or most people to walk into a bank and say, give me some money, it's actually quite easy for the government to go in, for the Canadian government to go in and to borrow money through what's called the bond market. And 2008, the Ontario government went to the bond market and borrowed $500 million to create an affordable housing loan fund. And they got a lot of money from that, and they in turn put that money out into the community for housing organizations and others to build housing. And so just yesterday there was a ceremony in downtown Toronto at a project called the YWCA's Elm Centre. It's an amazing supportive housing project. There's going to be homes for Aboriginal women. There's going to be a number of, it's just one of the most exciting new developments in my hometown in a number of years, and funded in significant measure by this new financing mechanism set up by the government. The federal government could do exactly the same. In fact, we've talked to financial experts who estimate the federal government could create a national housing fund of up to $10 billion, which would actually be a lot of money and would allow organizations on the ground to have good ideas to be able to access the money they need. So there are things the federal government can do, even as it continues to cut a number of its traditional funding programs, and I think we really have to look at that. And one of the most important things, as you hear today about all the great research you've heard from a number of researchers and all of this important research that we take to the federal government, what we're doing with this research is we're saying to the federal government, we're not just talking about sentiment and about being nice to people and so on, although being nice to people is actually a good thing, and it would be nice if our governments actually did that from time to time. But we're talking about something that's good, sound public policies backed by good, strong research evidence. And so when we say to the federal government that you could easily capitalize a national housing fund of $10 billion by going into the conventional bond markets and selling government bonds, we're saying that's not just something that we think would be a nice fantasy and that we don't really know what to do with the money. We actually know where that money could be invested here in Vancouver and right across the country from place to place. So thanks for allowing me to squeeze on the agenda. Good luck to all of you. And don't lose hope, and don't forget that money is important.